So we say ability to deal with normal stresses. And it gives us some examples of normal stresses, like divorce. It's a difficult thing, but it's a normal stressor. It's part of life. But most people are not able to deal with the impact of it. I've just explained to you how it gets to hit young people really hard because they connect with their parents biologically and not just socially. But we should have a system. We don't want divorce, but just in case that is your situation, circumstances beyond your control, you should be able to deal with it. Your system should be able to deal with that normal stressor. So if you are not able, you notice that you have issues with divorce and you have panic attacks. Your heart is actually beating. Then you are not able to deal with that normal stress. That means there's a mental health problem. Something is actually wrong. That's the reason why when people go through divorce, we also advise them to seek therapy, to seek professional help, so that professional help could take them through really well. Because let me say something. The issue with mental health, it doesn't go away on its own. It doesn't. Like what it does for many people, and I think that's the confusion for many people, it gets into hibernation. It gets to hide somewhere. It could hide in your life for many years and resurface in situations like when you get married, when you start a relationship, or when you go to school as a young child. You're actually going to have learning difficulties because some stressor is actually hiding in you. I'm happy we have our young people here. You know, there's a portion where we've got to actually stay a bit longer on that slide to talk a lot more about how you can know really very well, like my small brother seated here, if he's actually going through stress. Because I'm not sure at this age, he actually could define stress really well and communicate to parents. Now, what it is when they go through stress and it's not communicated to parents, right? Sometimes the stress gets into hibernation. When they grow, they get to like 16, 20, 24. You notice they're having serious mental health issues. So that's what we want to unpack. You know, when Daddy was actually talking, I like the example that Daddy actually gave about Jesus Christ healing the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years on his way to Jairus' house. And the child that was actually also, the child that was dead in Jairus' house was 12 years. Now, it wasn't the child that actually came to talk to Jesus, it was the father. It communicates something to us. There are things in the lives of our children. It's the responsibility of the parent. That issue, that story is story of the child, not you, the parent. But it is your responsibility. And if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. So it's extremely important. I'm so happy we have some parents here. But that's very, very important. So we will get to know about it. So we have normal stresses like divorce, relationships, workloads. Maybe divorce and relationship, we're talking about parents, we're talking about young adults. But workloads could come across even in school workloads. When everybody, once you say you want to go to school, your system must be able to deal with the stresses of workloads. So if you notice that your child is actually going to school and they're complaining about the workload of school, it is not just behavioral, it's brain chemistry. Something in the brain is actually not going right. Because all of us, we went to school. You know, I was actually talking to somebody and I said this. What communicates to us that school is a stressor we've got to deal with? I'm sure all of us seated here will be very honest to answer this question. Suppose that in school, you go to school, and the new school system is that, listen, if you do not want to write examination, that is no problem. You will get promoted. Those who want to write examination, you can submit yourself. We'll get you to write. You will also get promoted. Nobody will write examination. Even the people that are so really good in school and they are always first, they will not write it. It tells you how stressful school could be. So this is the point to actually communicate to you that our children go through stress. Sometimes we limit the whole understanding and definition to stress to adults, but children go through stress as well. So they have issues with workloads, then financial issues, and then conflict. Let me stay a bit on conflict and elaborate it properly, especially parental conflict. It could create stress not just for the parents, but to the children as well. You know, there's a proverb, there's a saying that when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Literally, it doesn't really communicate anything to us, but that's very true. Now, the grass that suffers, they don't have any mouth to talk, but they consume all the suffering. That is the story with our children. And it's so important for me to understand. So parental conflict. And then unmet expectations. This is one of the things that creates stress, especially to young adults. You know, when you were a child, you don't have much expectations. All your expectations are within your mother or your father. You see your mother and your father, they're the most powerful people in the world. You think they are providers, they are protectors. There is nothing they cannot provide. There's no protection they cannot give you. But as you grow, when you get independence, one of the things that could create stress in the lives of young adults is unmet expectations. Because you set standards, and sometimes you don't get to meet that. And that could trigger stress in you. Now, the next one is emotional losses. Emotional losses could be anything from the death of a loved one, the death of a child, or even you losing money. Huge sums of money. It actually gets you into stress. What this definition is actually talking about is your system, the system that God actually created to deal with stress. It must be able to deal with all of those stresses. So when you notice that you go through all of this and you have panic attacks or anxiety disorders, and let me create a distinction between panic attacks and anxiety disorders. They are really not the same technically. Now, anxiety disorders are disorders or some issues that you go through. You see your heart's pounding because of some situation. It was triggered by something. Maybe you are supposed to write an examination tomorrow. Now, the whole of today you haven't learned anything, and tomorrow is actually coming. Because of the examination, you notice that you haven't learned anything and your heart is actually pounding. With panic attacks, it cannot really be traced to anything. Every day, your heart is pounding. You don't even know why. Right. There are people, when stress hibernates, they are aware that the stress is not being healed. And it creates panic attacks to them. So what WHO is saying, and this stress, anxiety disorders and panic attacks, not just adults, but children go through that as well. And many times they don't communicate it because they don't have the full understanding of it. Let me say something. Parenting is connection. Parenting is work. Parenting is not just conversation. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a moment. It's a permanent rhythm. As a parent, you've got to be observing your child every day. As a parent, that's what parenting is about. You've got to be observing them every day so that unspoken body language, you should be able to understand. You should be able to know that, look, my child is palpitating. You should be able to know that my child is not sleeping very well. It's extremely important. Otherwise, the child could go through panic attacks or anxiety disorders. You will not get to know. As I said, mental health problems could hibernate. So a child that is actually going through anxiety disorders, I've actually treated people with anxiety disorders. They've suffered it for over 10 years. And as you grow with it, it becomes more difficult. There are people, when it happens, they feel like they're about to die. And when you get to talk to them, when was the first time you had this feeling? They go back to their thinking and they tell you, oh, I was young. I think about 6 years old. Did you communicate that to your parents? No. Why? I didn't understand. So it's extremely important for we to understand that once God makes you a parent, you have work to do. You really, really have work to do. And we pray that as we actually learning this knowledge, God will give us the strength to be able to do what we have to do.